He promised to marry her. Wait till you see them 2 decades later. The story of love that stood the test of time will leave you believing in love like never before. The story starts in a school playground between 2 children and ends up being one of the most amazing stories ever told. Carly and Ben were friends from a very young age. In fact, they were more than just friends. They were best friends. At their young ages, everyone around them already knew that they were inseparable. Ben loved following his best friend Carly around the playground, and he had always been amazed by her adventurous spirit and the way her creative mind made up fun stories and activities for them to play. On several occasions, when it was time to play, Ben would run up to Carly and ask her what they would have to do that day. And Carly, amused by the unwavering attention Ben would give her, would create something, and they would play all day. In their class, the teachers would comment that the 2 best friends could not be separated for long before they ended up sitting together. For the most part, the preschool teachers believed that their friendship was helping both of them learn and discover new things as they had each other's support. Their preschool teacher told both parents one afternoon at a pickup that she had never seen a bond so strong between 2 kids so young. She encouraged the 2 to meet outside of school and learn and play together. Both Ben and Carly's parents thought this was an excellent idea and were amused and surprised by the bond that they shared. So it happened that during the weekends and sometimes after school, Ben and Carly's parents would set up a play date at the park or the zoo or even the library so the best friends could bond and also challenge each other to learn about the world. On this particular day, the 2 were back in preschool and were playing on the playground like they did every day. However, unlike every other day, another child who was a little older and bigger than them came up, and he was known around the playground for teasing the other kids. He came up to Ben and Carly, who were lost in their world, playing their games and laughing, and he began to laugh. Carly stopped and looked up, her eyes welled with tears as the bully continued to laugh and tease her. Ben, being the protector he was, even at the age he knew he had to stand up for Carly. He told the bully to leave them alone. Just then, the bully turned to Ben and started teasing him for playing with Carly because she was a girl. And for kids at that age, playing with the opposite sex is something that got you laughed at. But Ben stayed calm as the whole school laughed. He looked at the pointed fingers and heard the giggles from the children. He didn't care because Carly was his best friend, and he would never stop playing with her. "I'm going to marry her," he said to the bully, and the laughter only multiplied as he said those words. But Ben didn't mind the teasing just as long as Carly was not upset. He grabbed his best friend's hand and pulled her away to another part of the playground. There, in the quiet, away from the noise, he tried to comfort her. Soon enough, Carly had forgotten all about the teasing and the laughter from the bully and the other kids. She was back with Ben, creating imaginary worlds for them to play in. As they say, good things don't last forever, and soon enough, Carly and Ben were done with preschool, and after the summer break, they would be going to elementary school. This was a very new concept for the 2, and they were anxious about starting. At least they would have each other. Carly and Ben spent many days that summer playing and going on adventures. The parents organized many play dates, and the bond between the best friends grew stronger. Little did they know that things were about to change soon. As the new school year rolled around, Ben and Carly discovered that they would no longer be in the same school. This was because the 2 did not live in the same school district, and so could not enroll in the same place. Carly was sad by this news, and she had only known Ben as her best friend and didn't know how she would take on this new school without him. Ben felt exactly the same and could not imagine not seeing Carly every day. Their parents convinced them that they would still stay in touch and arrange more playdates for them. But as time went on, the bond between Ben and Carly began to drift. Both of them made new friends in their elementary schools, and even though they still hung out during the weekends, it became less and less frequent. Next, the 2 moved to middle school, which again was in 2 separate districts. As the new friends came into the picture and pressures of school became a lot more, Ben and Carly found that their time together became less and less until it eventually stopped altogether. By high school, the bond between the 2 had become a distant memory. Carly became occupied with her classes and all the extracurriculars she was involved in. She loved writing and was head of the creative writing club in her high school sophomore year. Many times when she would write a story and had to think of a fictional place, she would remember her friend from when she was little, Ben. How she always made up fictional places as they ran around the playground. She sometimes wondered about him and where he was. She tried asking her parents for any information on his family, but apart from the pictures they took together as children, there was nothing else. She was constantly surrounded by friends who had similar interests and was already planning her future at college. The same went for Ben. At his high school, he was a smart kid, excelled in all of his classes. However, he had a real passion for biology, specifically marine biology, and would often go to the big aquarium in the city to study aquatic life. One day, while he was at the aquarium, he recounted a memory of him and his best friend from preschool hanging out together at the aquarium. He had never forgotten her, but had lost touch with her. Some time ago, he had asked his parents if they still had Carly's parents' phone number, but they said they didn't. Ben had even tried looking for Carly on social media, but had not found her profile. Even as a sophomore, Ben had his sights on one of the best colleges in the country where he could study marine biology. The two, although worlds apart, still had something in common. They would sometimes remember each other, and they were focused on going to college and expanding their knowledge, something they had grown up doing together. Soon enough, college rolled around and Ben got into his school of choice to study marine biology. He would have to move out of the state. He was very pleased with himself, and that's exactly what he wanted. Meanwhile, Carly got accepted into a world-class school for creative writing. Her school was in another country, all the way on the other side of the world. Although she would miss her family, her friends, and her home, she was excited for the world of possibilities that awaited her. College had been going great for the two friends, whose worlds had completely diverged. Not only because they no longer kept in touch, but also because they were on opposite sides of the world. Ben stayed in the USA studying marine biology, and Carly was in Australia studying literature and creative writing. Then, as if fate played its hand, in his second year studying marine biology, Ben had the opportunity for a year abroad study program where he would work with scientists to study marine life. There were several countries on the exchange year to pick from, but Ben chose Australia. He had always wanted to visit and see the oceans there. Many people do not believe in destiny or fate, but on this particular sunny afternoon in Sydney, Australia, Ben and Carly, who had not seen each other in over 15 years, would have to admit that this was fate. Carly had been feeling uninspired that week and could not complete her writing assignment for one of her classes, so she thought the best thing to do was to go out to the bay and overlook the water. Sometimes being in nature could help with creativity, Carly thought as she sat on a bench and felt the sun on her face. She pulled out her notebook and pen and scanned the area, and at the same time, Ben had just finished examining some crabs nearby for his class and was packing up his gear. He got to the end of the walkway when all of his gear came tumbling out of his bag onto the ground. They fell in front of a pair of pink flip-flops. Carly looked startled as the noisy things fell at her feet, and she saw notebooks covered in sand and beakers, a magnifying glass, and other things she didn't recognize. She bent down to pick them up by instinct and came up face to face with a familiar smile. As she picked up the beaker and looked up, she saw a flash of resemblance cross Ben's face. She wasn't sure, but she believed he looked familiar. Ben also looked at Carly a little puzzled. He couldn't place it, but he knew her from somewhere. As Carly handed the beaker to Ben, the two of them spoke at the same time. "Have we met before?" they both said in unison. As soon as they spoke, they recalled one another. "Ben?" Carly smiled, surprise on her face. "Carly," Ben replied, his look mirroring his longtime best friend. "What are you doing here?" the two said at the same time again, if as it was no time had passed between them. They were in sync just like 15 years ago. The two quickly started talking, catching up with each other and their lives after preschool. They shared stories from elementary school and middle school and high school to what brought them both to the other side of the world. It was as if both of them could not talk fast enough. There was so much they needed to share. Ben decided it would be a great idea if they met up for dinner and talked some more. Carly eagerly accepted the date and went home to freshen up. Their dinner date was filled with amazing stories and laughter. They talked about the memories they had of each other, and it felt like nothing had changed at all. The two clicked instantly, and for Carly and Ben, the butterflies they both felt in their stomachs meant only one thing. The feelings they had for each other had grown into something they never expected. The chemistry between the two was palpable, and by the end of the date, they both knew that they would be boyfriend and girlfriend. Ben and Carly spent the rest of Ben's exchange year together like old times, and they went on numerous adventures all around Australia and fostered their relationship even more. When they told everyone that they had been friends as kids in America and had only recently reconnected, everyone was amazed at their story. Unfortunately, Ben's exchange year had come to an end, and he had to go back to the United States to finish his degree. The two had a tearful goodbye, but they had decided to keep on dating and make the long-distance relationship work. "I lost you before, and I'm definitely not doing that again," Ben said to Carly as they said their goodbyes. As Carly and Ben navigated their final year of college, their relationship was put to the ultimate test. With the unbelievable time difference and the pressure of their final exams and courses, the two barely had time for each other, often missing calls and only sending a few texts here and there. However, they were determined to make it work. Carly and Ben finally graduated and were excited to be together again. Carly was going back home soon to see her family once more. 2 weeks later, Carly was back at home with her parents, who were very proud of her for accomplishing her degree. She had told them the unbelievable story of how she and Ben reconnected, and her parents were happy for her. As Carly settled into her old room, she received a text message from Ben telling her that he had a surprise for her. She had thought that Ben was still out of state at college, but when she saw him at the front door, she was filled with glee. Ben drove down the familiar roads of their city, passing all the places they had spent together as kids. Carly noticed that Ben was nervous as he kept drumming on the steering wheel and looking at her nervously. She asked him if he was all right, to which he replied he was. Carly assumed that he just must have been nervous about what the surprise was. Just then she noticed that the car was pulling onto a familiar road. The car stopped and Carly laughed in amazement. This was their preschool. She hadn't been back here in over 15 years. Ben helped her out of the car and walked her into the school. They were now standing in the playground. Not a lot had changed. The trees were still the same, and even the hopscotch game was exactly where it had been many years ago. Ben led Carly to the secluded area at the back of the playground where they would go when the teasing and the bullying became too much as children. Carly gaped as she saw what was in front of her. Ben had decorated the entire area with twinkling fairy lights and had set out a beautiful picnic under the tree. Her eyes welled with tears as she saw the care and effort Ben put into it all. Just then, what Carly could not have expected happened. Ben went down on one knee and pulled out a beautiful ring from his pocket. "Carly, 15 years ago at this very spot, I said I would marry you. I didn't know then that life would send us on different journeys, but ultimately reunite us again in a way I can only describe as fate. I used to follow you all around the playground, and I intended to follow you for the rest of my life if you say yes to marrying me." Carly was overcome with emotion as she whispered yes, tears falling from her eyes. She had never expected any of this, but she was overjoyed. Ben was the love of her life and most amazing man she had ever met. Ben had already met with Carly's parents while she was still in Australia, and he had made his intentions known to them. As Ben and Carly sat in their picnic and the fairy lights around them, they looked over at the playground and could almost see their younger selves running and creating worlds of make-believe. They had always meant to be together, and fate made sure of it.